When I was growing up, I never actually realised how lucky I was to have mum and dad who were there to answer all of my stupid questions. Typically, they'd start with, "Mum, how would I?" and range anywhere from bake bread to get new bins ordered to my house when I moved out. No question seemed too much for mum, and she always had an answer. When I actually realised how much hassle that saved me when I moved out, I realised how lucky I was. I also realised that not everyone had that resource to turn to, particularly in Ireland, where resources and how to set up an appointment or get utilities might be limited, and it might seem quite daunting to people. I thought, it's a shame, really. So, this is going to be my attempt to document everything my mum taught me, and today we'll start with some bread. The recipe that I'm following is an overnight focaccia from @_lacebakes_ on TikTok. I'll add it in the description down below. I'm using that one because it's a relatively easy yeast bread and it's kind of multi-purpose and it's really, really easy to get a nice soft loaf. But if you want the measurements, go to her page and find her overnight focaccia. Basically, all I'm doing here is I'm adding the wet ingredients into a jug. Make sure if you're making a yeast bread that you use warm water, not hot, because it'll kill the yeast. And you need to give it some sugar. It doesn't have to be sugar, it can be honey, but it just needs something to feed off of. So here I'm weighing out flour. I'm using all-purpose flour. Some people will say you need to use strong white flour, bread flour. And yet, if you're really, really, really into making bread, it'll probably be best to use that type. However, if you're just starting out baking, or you don't want to fork out the money like me, you can use all-purpose flour, plain flour. I think in America it's called all-purpose, but yep, just some regular plain flour into a bowl. I'm making a little well there, and then I'm adding my wet ingredients. I left the wet ingredients to sit to one side for a few minutes just to get the yeast going. You'll kind of smell it working. Some people will say leave it for ages. I don't really see the point. It still works. Here you can see I'm incorporating everything just into a kind of a shaggy dough. You want to make sure you're like scooping your hand to the bottom of the bowl and you're getting any of the dry flour up. You don't want to leave remnants of dry flour. Even here looking back, I can see on the sides of the bowls I probably should have given them a scrape. But don't worry, it won't be the end of the world. So what I'm doing now is I'm just scraping the edges and tucking it all into the centre. And the point of that is I kind of want it to form into a relatively smooth ball just so I can rest and prove. Make sure you're scooping from the very bottom centre up. It just gives a nice tight edge. Here I've let it rest for a few minutes, and then I'm doing my stretch and folds just to give a nice tight ball. You probably saw me dip my hand into a jug of water there. The reason why I'm doing that is this is a very wet dough or a high hydration dough. It means it's very sticky. So I dip my hand in water. You can rub oil on your hand. I don't like how it feels. But I dip my hand in water and it just kind of prevents the dough sticking to my hand. I've let it rest here and I'm just tucking it back in another set of stretch and folds. And now I've let it rest for about an hour until it's doubled in size. So what I'm doing now is I'm preparing to roll the dough out. I'm sprinkling a bit of flour on the countertop and I'm doing that so my dough doesn't stick. I'm getting the dough ready to be put into a loaf tin so that I can prove it. Focaccia normally isn't made in a loaf tin, but I find that it gives a nice soft loaf of bread, especially if you're just starting out. So I'm using a focaccia dough, cooking it in a loaf tin to get a sandwich loaf. It's quite versatile. You can do anything really with it. I've made rolls and like bread buns. I've made loaves of bread. I've made flat focaccia. It comes out really well anyways. So I'm shaping it now. Spread the flour out so it doesn't stick. And I'm kind of just rolling it into a sausage and joining the seam at the bottom. You can see here, I'm just kind of stretching and pinching the seam to seal it at the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want it to kind of hold together. It'll bake together anyways, but it just stops your bread falling apart when you're cutting it. You can see it's quite sticky, so I'm putting more flour on my hand. So just pinch, flip it back over. As you can see there, I rolled it onto a part of the bench. I'm showing you where it's stuck. I rolled it onto a part of the bench where there wasn't enough flour, so it got stuck. Just add more flour. It's not the end of the world. Shape it into a little sausage. I'm going to get my loaf tin now. It's very important to pre-prepare and think ahead so you're not running around the kitchen like I am. People get very stressed about baking. I like to start with bread because it's probably the most forgiving. You could make focaccia with a 70% hydration or a 90. It doesn't really matter. So I like making bread. It's kind of hard to mess up. Hydration is just the water content compared to the flour. I'm oiling my bread tin here just so it doesn't stick. If I was making a regular loaf of bread that was a little bit lower hydration, I probably wouldn't do this, but I know that this focaccia dough is quite sticky. So I'm oiling my bread tin. It's just a regular loaf tin. Dropping my little sausage in with the seam side down. It's ready for proving. So now I'm going to try and struggle with a bowl to cover it. With this dough, because it's so sticky, I don't like to leave a cloth over the top, because sometimes it sticks to the cloth. So I was trying to balance my bowl, it didn't work, so I just ended up grabbing the cloth. Put it to one side. You want to keep it in a kind of warm area so that the yeast has the highest activity, and tidy up after yourself. I know I absolutely hate cleaning up, but it's definitely easier to do it now than all at the end. You can see there I scooped the dry flour off with my hands. That's because if I add water to that now, it'll turn to a mush and stick. Also, I really want to apologise for the really bad video and audio quality and the random clips. I will find my feet, but I am only figuring this out. And unfortunately, I couldn't say, Mammy, how would I make this? If anyone has any requests for what they would like to know, I'll do my best to answer. I can't guarantee I'll have an answer, but we'll try. So now our bread's risen. I'm trying to show you it's risen slightly above the edges of the tin without knocking all the air out. If I was too rough, my bread would collapse because all the air would come out. So I'm preheating the oven. I've set the function and temperature. So I'm going to open the oven door, put the bread straight in, and then close the door. Don't leave it open, the heat will escape. You want to make sure that your shelf is in the middle of the oven and that your bread has loads of room to rise, because it'll rise while in the oven. So now I'm just taking it out of the oven, big puff of steam. So pop it out of the oven, place it up onto your counter. If it gets stuck in the tin, just give the tin a firm smack against the counter. That should loosen up the sides, but mine came out just fine. I've grabbed some butter, and you're probably thinking, what are you doing? I don't like the crust of my bread to be really, really, really crispy. And this will get crispy. Some people love it, not for me. Some people will wrap it in a damp tea towel. That will kind of make it a little bit bouncy, still not soft enough for me. So I'm now rubbing butter on the crust, and that will make the nicest, softest crust you've ever seen in your life. Also, I look like I'm struggling immensely. Normally, I would just rub the butter stick on it, but I'm trying to give off the impression that I wouldn't do that. So just butter all the sides and it'll be nice and soft. I hope this video helps someone. I don't know that it has been overly helpful, however, it's a starting point and we'll learn together. Most importantly though, I'm giving it a lash. Anyone who has anything specific they'd like me to show them, that's absolutely fine. I will do my absolute best. If I don't know how to do it, I'll try. One thing my mum instilled in me is there's no such thing as you can't. It's just, how can I go about that differently? So, I mean, you might ask me something that I don't know how to do, but we can try figure it out together. So, still buttering the bread. I'm making an absolute mess, as you can see. But look, it's all for fun. It'll be worth it in the end. What's really important as well is, and I think I show it later on, a lot of people at this point, because it smells delicious, will try and cut the bread at this point. When you do that, there is still steam inside of that loaf, and it's kind of like your bread is cooked when you take it out of the oven, but the steam is finishing it off to make sure you don't have a doughy crumb. If you cut that right now, a lot of the steam will come out, and the bread is cooked, but it'll be very, very doughy, and when you cut it, it'll all kind of cling together or clump together. It's hard to explain without seeing it, but just in order to have the fluffiest, nicest loaf you possibly can, just um avoid cutting it. So that's all for today. I'm going to leave you with a few videos of the inside of the bread and a video of a little fox I saw on a walk.